Good morning, everybody. It's Dan. It's early. We'll see if anybody pops on here in a minute. And for now, I think what we're going to do is just, go ahead and type any comments, questions, thoughts. Let me know you're here. And then we'll just go from there. Here's Daisy. Bye, Daisy. There's Kathy. Bye, Kathy. Oh, no, she's gone. There she is. Okay, cool. So, basement studio, here we are. Going to give this a shot. So, I'm going to start by talking about the books that I'm in the middle of right now. Which is, I wouldn't say as usual, which are several, but basically in the local little free library, I picked up the Book of Five Rings by Musashi, who, I haven't really looked into how everybody seems to think he was a real person, so that's cool. Apparently he had, an enormous number of duels from age 13 to 30, at which point he retired from dueling and then became an educator. I've read this previously, I want to say about 15 years ago. It's always published with the accompanying Family Traditions on the Art of War by Yagyu Minonori. If I recall correctly, I'm looking forward to getting to the end of this book. If I recall correctly, that's kind of a little bit more up my alley. Musashi's not written in what's called the classical Japanese. It's pretty crude. So there's just a lot of repetition, like a lot of martial arts texts. It would be the equivalent of like, now bang out 1,000 reps, closes many, many paragraphs. Whereas in the Munenori, there's a lot of talk about sort of what's the role here of the different types of offense, defense, and ultimately what's the purpose of all of it. So kind of digging on that. Also currently reading The Sabers of Paradise, which is about Dagestan, and sort of, it's interesting because it's written by a travel journalist, but it's a history of that region, and really the culture of which Khabib is a product. So I'm reading it because I happen to read that Dune, one of my favorite sci-fi novels, was largely, and certainly there are sections of this that are cut whole cloth and then transported over into Dune. Some stuff about how killing with the point of the blade is not as artistic as killing with the edge. A few things about situating the central character here, Shamil, in his place. Things like basically a hunting language called Chikobsa and some other stuff. So anyway, enjoying that so far. I'm also chipping away at Starting Strength, which if you saw Jiu-Jitsu Off the Ground episode 2, talked a little bit about strength and conditioning. And I think, this has been one that's been kind of on my list for a long time. I think, I've been powerlifting now for about a year and a half with it's like power bodybuilding, I guess, which you would call it. Just trying to get, put any mass on before the hormones leave me completely. Ripato's writing is really clear, really, really fun. And I've been digging on that. So even while I guess his understanding of kinesiology is not necessarily the most sophisticated in the world, certainly that's not what I need as an end user. And then, of course, because I am working on my self-defense all the time, still working in the Gracie self-defense master text, given that everybody's on quarantine, probably would be a great time to pick this up. If you wanted to talk to Lamont, we get the sense that some ordering stuff is maybe gonna, as Amazon goes to only essential items, I would just say if there's an opportunity to pick something like this up now, before we're kind of in the well for a while, that might be a good call. So briefly, I did want to mention that, prior to this whole situation, my aim was to sort of shift the morning sessions over to kata on the judo days and Gracie self-defense on the jiu-jitsu days. And I think that the reasoning for that, for me, I know, was I have to be working on those things. And and frankly, I do find them interesting. And also that my left knee still has clearly some fluid in it, or some inflammation, which maybe dates back to as far as November, when I did a Go Ruck Heavy, and it never fully recovered from that. It's been a little wonky ever since. It now being March, it seemed like it was time to really unpack that before it became chronic. Like a lot of people say, there's sort of hurt and there's injured. And I think, after something doesn't heal up over that amount of time, I start to go like, okay, this is an injury, it needs to be fixed. But one of the beautiful things about kata, and also about the Gracie self-defense curriculum, which I do think of as the sort of kata of jiu-jitsu, is that you've got this ability to train with very few partners. And I think right now we're all being reminded exactly how precious training partners can be. We're not able to get together with a bunch of training partners. We don't have a gym where we can go and see a bunch of people. And obviously that is the best form of training. The best form of training is fighting people. There's really no question about that, that working with others is the only way that you can learn a kinetic art. Kata, however, I think becomes this sort of reserve tank. It's almost like, for a long time, they didn't really think the appendix served a role in the body. It was like, man, just cut that shit out. No big deal. But I think we've now come around to an understanding like what the appendix does is it serves as this little reservoir for the sort of microbiome that everybody's unpacking now. That having the appendix is important because when your body gets waylaid with whatever infection, and then, all this stuff gets, your normal ecosystem gets all stripped out, there's this little reservoir where, and just to be clear, not an anatomist, could be bullshitting, but you have this reservoir where the gut can sort of repopulate itself. And I think in a similar way, that's the role that kata can play and maybe should play. We're teaching a movement-based art. We're teaching an art that involves two bodies, and sometimes more if it's bar fight night. And so you have to have, and basically imagine a scenario where your only training partner is not necessarily that strong, or is super precious, or both. And so you got to figure out a way that you can train with that person in a controlled fashion, and understand the dynamics of the technique, and be able to share the dynamics of the technique without breaking them or breaking yourself. And so that's been kind of a fun realization for me. I think coming from, kids Taekwondo type stuff, kata to me was the stereotypical, wow, that's everything that's wrong with the martial arts. That's everything that's wrong with like mall-based martial arts. People do their little dance and get their little belt and pay their $50 and get their stripe or whatever it is. That said, especially having attended at Sport Judo, the kata clinic 2 weekends ago, and just very rapidly being shown exactly how slow we're not taking it, and how important that can be to understanding the componentry of a throw, of a technique. It's where jiu-jitsu is all about details, or judo is all about details. It's really when you start to dig down into kata that you start to, that I feel like it's kind of a weird control type thing where you can just see like, okay, as much as, like no wonder my foot sweeps have never hit, because I wasn't observing this fundamental principle of, at this point is when you get to do this, so I would love to hear from you. Any questions you guys have, any thoughts you have? Is anybody here? Oh, we dropped to 1. I would type something in the chat box to let me know you're here. Cool. So all that said, we can commence a short warm-up. For me, again, it does generally start with the shrimp, but we'll do some cat-cow to get started and get some mobility in the back, and then we'll go from there. If there's anything on the audio or on the video that you feel like I need to be working on here, please let me know. All right. we'll give this a shot. So I'm just going to get into that cat-cow position. My hands are underneath my shoulders. I'm just going to arch. And then I'm going to sag. And my chin's going to come up. Inhaling as I do this. Exhaling as I come back. Inhaling. Exhaling. And I'm just going to hit these for 5. Last one. As we started talking about posture in all things, 1 second here. Cool. Glad you're out there, Dan. And then I'm going to drop into this pigeon pose. So in order to do this, I'm really going to flare this knee. Let's see here. To the outside. And just try to get this hip open a little bit. Not going to put too much pressure on my knee if that's not comfortable. I'm going to allow myself to fall forward to the extent that I need to do that. And then I'm just going to sort of settle here. My left leg is back. Then I'm just going to settle in here and breathe. So Dan, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to text those. But you can see I just sort of brought my foot up to the front of my other hip and I flared my knee. Just hang out here for another 30 seconds or so. Again, none of these things should be a strain, and as we're sort of warming up nice and gentle, we're just going to go easy. There's nothing like a single car accident to make you feel like a real jackass. Okay, so I'm going to come back up. Then I'm going to bring my other leg through and flare it to the outside and settle in. Again, if you want, you can sort of post on everything like this. Where I'm really feeling this right now should be if you're mirroring me, it would be your right butt and the front of your opposite hip. So over here, maybe feeling a little stretch, and then back here. And then feel free to fall forward if that's more comfortable. But so try to keep that rotational aspect in there. And there's no pressure to fall down like this. If we were really doing yoga, the next thing would be to like bring that back foot up behind. But I don't think you need to worry about that too much. We're mainly concerned about hips being open and comfortable and able to move sort of dynamically. Just a couple more breaths here. All right. Cool. So as long as we're here, might as well go for butterflies. You just bring your feet in and flare your knees. Just kind of bounce them and let them fall flat as they can. I've always been pretty fortunate as far as hip openness. I wouldn't say strain this at all, but just, if you want to provide a little like traction to it, that's fine too. Just get open, and then, and then if you're super pliable, you can start to fall forward. Keeping a nice straight back if you can. Again, if the comments aren't working for you, you can always text me. or I can open my Facebook and get Facebook messages, or those will pop through on my phone. If you have any technique questions or anything, love to hear them, love to see them. Come out of this gently, kind of flap those little butterfly wings. I think this is also part of why a lot of people misunderstand butterfly guard. They think that anytime they've been told to butterfly, it's been like, oh, like a butterfly, like stretch or whatever. And it's like, no. And also because butterflies are symmetrical. Of course, generally speaking, what we're looking for in butterflies more like this, and especially with that connection here. But as we try to sort of bisect the person. Okay, so if I don't get any cues, I'm just going to go through the super duper basics. So one more thing just to do, I think, as far as hips, is to roll up onto your back and swivel and rotate, sort of pummel in. We'll just stay here for a minute, just doing this. 20. Back out the other way. Okay. And now we'll go for our cross collar chokes coming up from the bottom. So again, anytime we're doing this, most of the time your cross collar chokes are going to be as successful as they were deep. So to begin with. So then you get into this thing where what you want to visualize is, in a way, your thumbs connecting. Okay. And especially for me, I'm normally going to open the jacket overhand like this. And then it sort of creates this little highway for me to slide back to the label. I just sort of pull it open and slide right up. And now I'm way back in there. Okay. And then for me, most of the time, in actuality, that's going to create this nice wrinkle on the far side of their shoulder in the plush that I'm just going to be able to grip onto and hinge. And then I'm going to suck my elbows back to my body. Okay. For these purposes, and again, almost every Gracie I've seen teach this has taught both hands in this. I can't remember which one is, like Gyaku and Name or whatever, but I believe this is Name. And so open, go all the way in, and then they come all the way in on the other side like this. Okay, and then then as far as warm-ups, we're just going to get our legs up in the air, and then we're going to, again, suck your elbows back. Remember, what you're not doing is you're not flaring your elbows, because that's not like, we're trying to close the scissors, and the scissors close like this. And they'll close by our flaring our elbows, which is the classic sort of rookie mistake. So we're here, and we're just going to suck these back for 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So standing up in base. And again, please, if you can pop through on the chat, go ahead and send any questions. Obviously, I'm up, so you can text any questions. Let's see here. Send me questions. But for now, we're just going to work on standing up in base, which is just a reminder that we need to do that right all the time. So, you know, again, from here, I'm going to be starting in this sort of chilling on the beach position. I'm going to be looking at you through my fingers, you know, and I've got this sort of shield and screen right now, you know, as you can see, sort of from my fingertips down to my foot here, I've got a protective shield. And the added consequence is that if someone were to sort of bum rush me and push me back, they drive me back onto this post. Again, the big trick here is making sure that this arm is far out enough that it accommodates this big, long femur. So from here, and all I'm going to do is make my little hammock. Just 1, 2. Remember that I've got a defensive option here. 3, right? 4. And on 5, I'm going to kick, and then I'm going to swing it back through. 5. Okay. If I ever want to reverse it and sit back down, I just put my hand to the mat, and sit through. Now I'm here on the other side. Okay. So ready? I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and on 5 I'm going to kick through and swing it back through. 5. And that allows us to get up while managing the distance. In terms of falling, and anytime you're finding yourself coaching anybody while falling or coaching someone to fall, we want to make sure that they're protecting their head. So if you find yourself coaching someone who has never trained before, let's say you got like that one precious training partner, or by some miracle, you convince your spouse in your household to train with you, you're going to want to make sure that on the off chance that they fall, on the off chance that they fall, they don't die, and that you maybe get to throw them one day. So to start that out, all we're going to do is we're going to flop from side to side and ensure that our arm basically stays parallel with our femur while our shoulder shields our head from the mat. So we're here, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that person. Actually, we can just start from here to here. That's all it is. Okay. So the awesome. So we're here. We're gonna go here. Cool. All right. And all we're doing, like, I'm still keeping my body relatively that kind of 90 to 115 degrees relative to my legs, and then I'm just gonna fall down. And that slap, I don't want to overemphasize that slap. The slap is really the last thing. So it's okay to just even keep it hidden and then just hit everything at the same time. Okay? This is how we would come out of various like Zempo Kaitan if we're falling out to our side. And like a side weekend. Same thing on the other side. So I'm here, right? Whatever side I'm going to fall to is generally the arm that I put on top. Just fall to my side. Fall to my side. Fall to my side. And in this way too, I preserve my shoulder. I'm not reaching out and jamming my shoulder. Want to mention that the adaptive judo seminar was really great for this. As far as one of the points they made was that CDC definitely has a lot of fall prevention guidelines right now, and that's great. But the reality is, and we get into this thing too, where it's like nobody wants to go to a hospital. If possible, it's really important to be teaching people what to do when they fall, because most of the fall risk people, it's just going to happen at some point. And especially for a lot of our population now, especially like senior members of our population, we're looking at, people having, a lot of blood thinners and so on. Okay, let's see here. David can't access the live link. Let me give this another try. And then Dan, I see your question, so I'm going to get to that in just a second here. One moment. Give this one more try. Okay, so Dan asks, many of my new guy attacks. Oh, you mean you're the new guy, right? We could always attack new guys. The many are dependent on the opponent being broken down and staying broken down. In reality, it is difficult to get a big, strong guy to stay broken down if he doesn't want to. Any tips to get and keep them broken down so I can throw a triangle or otherwise? Okay, cool. So yeah, so there's at least 2 answers to this question in the way of all things. I would say again, just always remember that you can always go at least 2 directions with your jiu-jitsu. That there's a lot of times you run into the problem of, should I resist this or should I go with it? And I would say if someone's big and strong and you cannot keep them down, then a lot of times maybe the idea would be to sweep them. So yeah, like in the classic example, you have this sort of I'm here, I've got my guard closed, I've got them broken down, I've got my arms, maybe I've got like I'm over one arm and I'm around their neck, and it's just a big strong fucker, like whatever it is, and the person is sort of prying and posting and prying and posting. So most of the time, that's going to be indicative that I now need to try something else, because as strong as I am with my pulling, and this is one of the things that's been interesting about getting into weightlifting, has been realizing, like, because of jujitsu, my pressing is just like, is for scheisse. Like, I'm working on it, but my pulling is really strong and really consistent. I can just sort of hang on people. So, that said, I mean, I'm not that big, and there's guys that are a lot bigger, and people who have worked on pressing a lot, and they've got that advantage, So as they're pressing up, I mean, in the classic example, if you see their head starting to drift back at all, then at that point, I would probably break my guard, put my foot to the mat, hop over whichever opposite side arm with this arm, and hip heist. In the event that they then slam me back down, which, this is all kind of timing dependent, they then slam me back down. Now we're here, and I'm going to start locking up my figure four, and then I'm going to snake walk back into them for my kimura. Okay, so and then that actually sort of can end up feeding to your triangle if they then plow back in the other way. So I would just say the first answer is keeping them down, is a noble and worthy goal. But if you find that you just can't because they're too strong and they're pushing too hard and whatever, then what do you got to do? You can't counter that strength with strength. You have to glom onto that strength and kind of get your hips mobile. I will say, I feel like personally, I'm as guilty of this as the next person, that I don't necessarily move my hips all the time. A lot of times, I think because I'm fairly mobile, I just sort of I let that mobility do the work for me. And the downside of that is that because I have great joint mobility, I don't necessarily keep my hips moving in a dynamic fashion. And if someone's giving you that much press and that much push, most of the time they're going to be giving up some aspect of their, they're going to be breaking their own balance to the back or to the back and to the sides. Again, if someone's in your guard here, it's important to understand that, like, we have this sort of like a 8-pointed star, right? As far as like the different directions we can take them. But as a practical matter, it's almost certainly not going to be this way, this way, this way, or directly behind me. There's just too much material in the way as far as like their legs, their hands, whatever. So then the trick becomes to take them off at these angles and then to ensure that they don't have the ability to post on that side. So there's different ways that they might be trying to push on you or push away from you. And I mean, look, sometimes they're just yoked and big. So then the other option becomes, go ahead and open your guard. You can go ahead and open your guard and play a more dynamic guard. This is a great time to start picking up sort of some De La Riva. Talk about things that are tricky to train without a partner. But as somebody's pushing on your, like if they're really disciplined and they're really postured and you're not sweeping on the way out and you're not able to catch that triangle on the way out, a lot of times that's when it's sort of like, well, might as well attack a leg. And I feel like that's where a lot of times I find myself sliding down and off the person and making sure that as I'm exiting, I'm coming off to a side. So as I come off to a side, now I'm able to get that De La Riva hook, that leg entanglement on the one side. And then, and I've still generally got these sort of longer range kind of sleeve and collar type grips, as opposed to, mostly it's because I couldn't sort of stay over their back that they're getting up. So I hope that helps. The other thing is, you may find yourself in a way, like when you got to close guard, and talk about new guys attacks, like you're going to want to climb that guard as high as possible. That way, your weight is sort of on their kind of mid back end up and really breaking their posture down, as opposed to if your closed guard's like attached to their hips and your upper body's doing all the work. Now we're kind of violating that fundamental principle that, you know, almost all of our strength's in our legs, or 80% of our strength is in our legs. So we're really going to want that to be doing the job. Okay, I'm going to go back to look at the rest of your question now, Dan. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. In reality, it is difficult to get a big, strong guy to stay broken down if he doesn't want to. And that's the thing, is like a lot of times he's not going to stay broken down. And that's where it's really important to start flanking. So whether that's monkey boy, like, you know, and this is where I find that there's a lot of power in this very, like when I went to the Henry Aiken seminar a couple of years ago. Oh, and by the way, I just want to, you know, a big screw you to all you guys that have let my beard be this crooked without telling me. Just out there. I want that out there. But when I went to this Henry Aiken seminar a while ago, he one of the things that he was using that I thought was pretty interesting and fairly simple was just a very simple, just elbow to palm. And it's not so much that you're likely to actually tricep push yourself off the mat, but that as your hips are moving around, a lot of times, like this is a nice stable, you know, I'm already around a guy's back over here. You know, I'm starting to come up with my hips. And as I come up with my hips a little further, I'm able to come out, and then it's just elbow to palm. And now I'm posted up here, and it just helps me to get around to that back. It's a really deceptively simple thing. And it's I think the reason it's deceptive is because it is sort of like an appendage or an addendum. You know, like it's not like this isn't going to get you there. What's getting me there is the hip movement over here. Right? And like my legs, you know, are going to get me sort of warm around this dude, right? But as the sort of final piece that finishes that motion, like to get from elbow to palm, it seems to really help me to get finally around my opponent. Also, I know you're talking about Alex. Anyway, so let's see. I would also say this is a good time to mention, like, that's where, I mean, and I have like a little bit of a ganglion cyst now on the inside of my wrist from from hanging like that. But that's where, like, you know, you open the collar, you feed your wrist in. And then for me, now that just hangs there. And all the time people will strip it, and I just rip it in, put it right back in there. Open, put it right back. I mean, and that's where, I mean, it's a fine balance between, you know, accommodating how much bigger, stronger, faster, movement-based somebody can be, and then the sort of like insisting on it. You know, go ahead and insist on, like, no, I have to win the grip battle. Sorry, that's how it is. Dave, did you have any questions? I would also say that the triangle, at least for me right now, and I'm not saying that I'm by any means an expert, but I would not maybe throw the triangle as a counter to someone who is posturing up, in the sense that I really do need their posture. I need to be controlling the back of their head a lot of times, like you know, understanding that the best way to pass a triangle is simply to be postured. You know, if I'm here, I'm triangleable. If I'm here, I'm just not. And a guy on the way out, a lot of times, like now the race that we are having is, can I latch the back of my knee behind his head, neck, shoulder, you know, faster than he can do a clean. And a lot of times that's not going to happen. So yeah, so I think that keeping someone broken down is sort of key to being able to triangle them. And that's where, like for me, I know I've started to add like just a little bit more hang on the back of the head to sort of like, as I hit that pass off, in order to get my leg behind that head, and to be able to hang off of that person with my legs, you know, I mean, because most of the people that I've trained with now know that, you know, I'm often baiting the triangle and sticking my arm in there and saying like, hey, like one arm in, one arm out, you should totally go whoop, you should totally go ahead and not, and then it's not there, and then I'm stacking. One thing that I noticed on some resources that are out there that are pretty cool right now, Garage Strength is doing this daily dumbbell and body weight workout. And I did the first one of those yesterday and found that to be pretty fun. And Portland Judo on Instagram is going to be walking through, it looks like the Nage no Kata, and they're just doing it literally like gi slams and tai sabaki. So I think that's kind of cool because most of us do have at least a spare gi jacket. And I think all of us could probably use better footwork in the standing domain. So if there aren't any other questions, that's what I'm probably going to start working through until at least the 7 hour. You sure you don't have any other questions? Okay, cool. Excellent. See, any mention of kata and people start to come with the questions. Nicely done. So oh, hey, Dave. I can see that Dave's now on the chat. Great. So the next question that came up is legs and arms get in the way. As I get slightly better at passing guard, I'm having trouble establishing position. Once I pass, it ends up being a scramble. Legs and arms get in the way. Yeah, so, I mean, a perpetual problem for sure. But, I mean, I think this is where we get into, to start with, like, I don't know if you saw, like, Matt Thornton, the guy that runs Straight Blast Gym, posted this beautiful tree, and I'll link to that in the notes later. But basically, it was sort of like, position and pressure and possibility. But one that I feel like a lot of people miss is connection. And he's a Hickson black belt, so it sort of makes sense because Hickson's always mentioned that like connection is always better. And Hickson has made the point that like it's like I can touch you here and sort of know where the rest of your body is going to go. And I think the other aspect of that is you want to be able to feel people and where they're going with the various parts of your body. Hey, don't touch your face. With the various parts of your body, with, not just your hands, not just your fingers. We're so, I think, accustomed to being these like upper body and like, these are my sensor parts creatures. And that's not how jiu-jitsu works almost at all. These have jobs to do at that point, but if they're padding around feeling for what they're supposed to be doing, that it's not gonna cut it. So in terms of on the pass, I mean, for me, most of my passing is done really with my shin right now. And that's not to say there's not a hand fight to ensure that I've either cleared the hands, cleared a knee, whatever. But most of the time, what I'm looking for is I tend to sort of step to the center, and then I've just got my shin here. And at some point, I'm going to feel some counter pressure from a femur. Most of the time, it's going to be like I'm splitting the legs. It's going to be here, and I'm going to be looking for that ability to just now take my shin. And this is not that forceful. I'm just going to put my shin to the mat. And then in an effort to keep now that femur isolated, I'm going to put my hand in the far side here. Here is a person. As my knee carves across their leg here, right? This hand is either going to occupy this spot here on their chest or over here under their armpit. And then I'm just going to slide down. My butt is going to come down and my shin is going to shave down their leg. And then I'm underneath here or I'm right here. And then what becomes important is that as I take that turn, my knee comes right up into their hip. And then I hug them close here. You see I've scrunched this gi now, right? Where my goal here has been to get them all smushed up. And now their arms, I mean, some guys are pretty strong and can sort of bench back a lot, you know, that's cool. But I mean, but basically, you know, if they're framing here and stuff like that, I mean, most of the time I'm going to be trying to get my whole kind of face self down. And I'm going to be toggling between my knee being in this hip pocket and then my hip being in that hip pocket. What I'm not going to be doing in general is sort of being in between. So either I'm right there, and I'm sorry about the light right now. Let's see here. There, I'm right here, and my knee is in, and I'm smushing them to me like this, or I'm right here. A lot of times, sitting to my hip like this allows me to do a couple things. One, it allows me to sit away and settle my weight onto their midline. Two, that a lot of times is when I can then pull their arm away, whether it's for like a case of Gatami or whatever. You know, like their little frame is kind of strong in here and kind of pressing on me and trying to push me back, and I'll just give them that space. And then that comes to the outside, and now I'm back on top of it. And now is when I start to scoop up behind their head. And now I come back to my knees into their side and settle into side control for a minute. And then you know that my general progression of late has been to go ahead and get the back of the collar here, leave this long thumb bone on the back of their cervical spine, like in the middle of their spine, go to knee on belly, and then lately I've been stepping over for this choke. You don't always have to pass on that side. In fact, to mention, as we mentioned, the scramble and get into sort of the meta stuff. I mean, the thing is, like, as Jason Culbreth, who's down in Cary, BJJ, in Cary, North Carolina, pointed out, losers pass left. So almost everybody steps off at every curb with their right foot. You know, every curb I've stepped off with my right foot. Every first step I take as I step up onto a stair, you know, right foot, right foot, right foot. And this person's probably also kind of right side dominant, both right hand and right leg. And they just get used to kind of catching it and trying to work to defend with the inside of this leg. So something that you can do to really mess them up is to switch feet. And now if you drop your knee on this side, as I've been experimenting with this lately, what I found is that it's really true. People just go kind of like full idiot when that happens to them. Yeah, definitely. So a request came through to walk through the mechanics of that collar choke. So the Benowitz, are you still there? So anyway, so here we go. Real quick though, just to finish on losers pass left, just to say, this is where, again, if you can feel with your shin, you can sort of feel where their balance is, and you're here, and now it's just, I just staple the inside of that femur. Same thing on this side, and I come through here. And just, I'll just say again, what you find is that people just do not get it. They just don't. They're just like, I've never been passed on this side. And it's really true. You know, they're just like they just, you know, now their left hand is coming up to defend, their right hand's, everything's backwards for them, and they've just never been passed that way before. Okay, so let's see here. I don't have any stuffed animals handy, Dan, but I do have a lightsaber. So here's a neck. This neon belly kind of spin choke that I've been enjoying is basically, it's kind of like an inverted baseball bat choke. So basically, traditionally speaking, for neon belly, well, one, it's important to point out that it's not normally on the belly. Like Brad Wolfson pointed out to me, he's at Soulcraft BJJ in Connecticut. They're a really great dude. And basically, for him, the shin is kind of going across here, like xiphoid process, like right at the base of their ribs. And most of the time, what you historically saw was people take this cross collar in here, and they take this sleeve. And with this, now you've got a lightsaber. You're here, and you've got a triple attack in the sense that If this hand comes up to try to defend, I'm going to thread underneath it, and I'm going to step around and over their head, and I'll come down for my sleeve bar. Okay, so just to review that one more time, I'm here. This is the conventional, like I'm inside that same collar grip that I was advising to keep a person broken down. It's right here. It allows you to put an enormous amount of pressure. People will tap to this sometimes, you know, I mean, not in competition, but in the gym, you know, like you're just here and you're just crushing them and they're just like, you know, so we're here. A natural thing to do when the knee is on the belly, and really it's more like shin on sternum, is to go ahead and say, God, get that thing off of me. So they go to press on it. It's called knee on belly, right? Get the knee off the belly. And so when you see this little triangle open up, you just reach in, step high, let your trailing leg fall over the head, and go ahead and arm bar, right? Okay. So that's the first of the 3 attacks in a conventional knee on belly triple attack. Second, I'm here, and I just pick them up and choke them. Right? Again, kind of like we talked about earlier on that cross collar choke. If I'm here, a lot of times it creates that little ridge. Even if the shoulder's inside this, it like my wadding it up like this tends to create this little ridge line here. And I just go there, and then I just carve and pull them up to me. This, especially coupled with the pressure of my weight on their sternum, often just makes people, you know, kind of die. But they've still got hands free and they're defending that a lot of time. So third defense that they tend to mount is to try to put this hand on the inside of this leg. And maybe you can see where this is going. But basically, if they go and touch the inside of this leg, now I'm just going to pick this up real high, step over their head, and now I'll fall back for my armbar. Okay? Okay, so one more time on that for the last, just to say, and then we'll go to the spin choke. So I'm here, right? And most of the time, just to say, yes, my knuckles are on the mat. Like I've got a handy tripod right now. I'm across his chest. Brad definitely advised to walk fairly far north with this outside leg. Okay, and all my weight's on this person. And I'm sort of surfing it. By the way, this is if you can have good mobility in your knees. Like if you can sit Seiza, that's really like talk about things you can do at home. Just try to sit like this every now and again. I found that when I was not able to sit like this, trying to ride knee on belly sometimes would give me I definitely have some junk in my knees or meniscal tear, whatever. And my knee would lock up. So restoring what I think of as full mobility to my knees allowed me to ride knee on belly without fear. Early, I would say in my first 2 years, and I was coming off of an ACL repair over here, right? But in my first couple of years of jiu-jitsu, definitely I would experience some lockup in my knees because frankly, my knee was never that comfortable being sort of beyond here. So to be able to compress your knee to your butt fairly comfortably so that there can just be that straight up hip integration is a great thing. And you know, I mean, that mobility may not be mine forever, but I'm just saying if you can restore any mobility to your knee, you should. And now's a great time to work on mobility since we can't work on some other stuff. So again, here, so we're over there. If they grab with this one, we loop under it and step over. If they're just dead, we can just choke them, right? If they touch the inside of my knee here, I can just scoop it, step over the head, and sit back for my armbar. Pinching my knees. Okay? All right. The newfangled one. So yeah, so I've been using this a lot lately. And granted, I might just be full in white belts, but it seems to sneak up on a lot of people. Yeah, because it's kind of like in Return of the Jedi, where they're like, fly casual, you know. So I'm here. I've got this sort of knee on belly position. And instead of going for this conventional grip that everybody's on the lookout for, and they know what's going to come, I'm just casual. I'm just here. I'll even set the grip up from side control. I'll just be here. Like, you know, this long bone of the thumb is behind the neck. And I'm just chilling. And then kind of like Roland shared at the last, Roland Barringer just got his black belt back in October. Congratulations. And so he taught a seminar at our promotionals in Alexandria in December. And his thing was, in getting the knee on belly, go ahead and carve your elbow back to your knee, right? Instead of like hopping up and maybe having them defend, go ahead and carve your elbow back across their torso to your knee. As your knee comes up, now you're in the knee on belly. Hello, Daisy. And you're here. And now they're sort of chilling and doing whatever. And then instead of bugging for the choke in any other way or worrying, maybe look, these don't not exist now. These options are still here. It's still the case if he comes up here, I can dive for that armbar. It's still the case if he comes up here, I can go for that armbar. But what's changed is I don't actually need him to do anything, and I'll take the pressure off. And a lot of times that when that pressure comes off, this person will sit up, and now this is going to dive down their body, and my femur is going to come over across their neck, and then boom, I'm just on top of them. It plays really well with the reaction that a lot of times as that pressure comes off, they roll right up into it. And so the cut can be very deep, very fast. And so that came from Ronnie West in Delaware Combat Sports. West, I don't know how he likes to pronounce it, but he's a savage, and he taught that at a seminar at our place, and I've kind of used it ever since. So the I don't know if did you want to hop in and be the
Yeah.
No. Okay, so Kathy's going to put this jacket on. Welcome, Kathy, who is now at UK. She's going to. What a way to be introduced to the mats, because basically, I should lay down, please. With your head facing on. So. I don't know if you guys' wives are going to try this with you, but that's cool. So I'm in here. If you sit up for a second, I'm in right here behind her neck, and if you can see, what's centered on the back of her neck is the long bone of my thumb. Okay, the one north of the knuckle right here. So that's just sitting there. So she's here, and I go to knee on belly gently, right, and then I'm just going to dive my leg over her head. And then my femur is going to slot into that thing, into that carotid on the far side, while my forearm blade cuts into the carotid on the near side. Thanks, honey. Okay. Any other questions, anybody? While you are there, run through the mechanics of that choke. Good. Okay, cool. And then, well, this has probably been some good progress. As I understand it, this will be archived. So there's that. Let's see. And I guess what I'll plan to do now is sign off in the next couple minutes if nobody else has any more other questions. I hope this worked out. Would love to hear any thoughts on the format. I put up the 2 episodes of Jiu-Jitsu off the mat so far in the hopes of like kind of stimulating a conversation maybe on the more philosophical side or training side. If you have any feedback on that or criticism, suggestion, I welcome it. So my plan is going to be to hang out here for another like 5 minutes and then take a break and maybe work some self-defense with Kathy. Or in fact, we could work the self-defense now.
Sure. Okay,
cool. So let's just do that. Kathy and I are going to start working the self-defense. Let's see. So a reminder that, and it depends on your location, I guess, but certainly at the Team Tacoma location, we are doing, we are testing on the self-defense to determine if people are eligible for their blue belt, and for any belt. It's not just blue belt, but for the blue, it's the first 10. Sorry, 20. So this is something that you could certainly train with family members. So go ahead. So we worked on this the other day. So basically, if Kathy's got her, if I take a wrist grab, Kathy knows that her responsibility is to turn, is to turn that blade of the bone to where the thumb and forefinger come together, and then just turn it in, right? And what's not happening, and what my son was doing the other day, is starting to recruit the shoulder and get into this whole thing, and we don't want to give up our base. We want to settle our base, just like there was a weight tied to our waist, and we're settled down, and now, boom, right? Settle the weight, boom, right? If I take an overhand grip, yeah, that's it. it goes up and out. No, up, yeah, like this. Here you do it. Over here, like this.
Okay.
So this is a very awkward movement. So to start, I'm just going to go up and out. I'm just opening it out like that. We just talk about like Taekwondo kata. Go ahead. So you're going to rotate up and out like that. Mm-hmm. Up and out. Yeah. Up and out. Yeah, there we go. There it was. Up. Yeah. See? Rotate the blade of the wrist. There you go. And then just curl out. Boom.
Oh,
done.
I see.
Yeah. So exactly. So anytime you have that thumb and forefinger, yeah, this is why it's like you just have to have a partner. You know, I'm just turning the blade of my wrist towards it and turning it out. Boom. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then, you know, so then the question becomes, what if she goes ahead and takes both of my, you know, now I can't just go in a direction that way. So I need more recruitment. So again, I get my base so I don't get all wrenched around. I settle. I grab my own fist, right? And then I plow. My hips are a part of this, okay? Let's see if I done the lights better.
Oh.
That's why I did this. Better?
I don't know.
It's a little dark. Yeah. Right. Can you guys see okay?
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, that's better, right? Okay. So even we could probably take that one off. But so she takes the double grip. I gotta settle my weight. What would be terrible is if I take these and like you're thinking about the wrist defense and I'm just wrenching you all over the place, right? So Kathy's gonna get her base. So like wait, boom, right. Yeah, exactly. And go ahead and get online. You're gonna see that in general, in the Gracie self-defense, there's not that many stances. It's kind of like horse stance, right? Like this sort of get your base. Like you can see my feet. Right? If you can see me from parallel or whatever. Like, you know, this is the stance, right? Or alternately, this sort of T stance or cat stance in like old school Taekwondo, where it's just, you know. So in this case, in order to get that base, like someone takes that double wrist grip, I'm going to settle like that. And now my weight is evenly distributed between my feet, and I've got some perpendicularity there. All right, so one more time. So, nice. It's getting too dark. Okay, so she's got that wrist. I settle. I've got my lead foot. I plow. That does become an elbow strike. So here's Kathy. Boom, she settles. Plow. Right, exactly. Good. One more time. Settle. Plow. Try to use a little bit more hip. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, cool. So we got the wrist grips, and now we got the two-hand choke defense. So if, and I'm sorry, we missed one set of wrist grips, which are the, like, let's say you are already in the fence like you should be with your fingers at about eyebrow height, and you're like, hey, man, I'm really sorry that thing I said about your mom. You know, like Kathy's here, and she gets jammed, right? So now she knows that she needs to roll, one at a time. She's going to roll over. 1, 2, yeah. And as much as possible, if she does it to me, what's really going to break it is both that it's the same in the sense that the wrists are turning away from the elbow and forefinger, but also as my elbow rolls over her forearm, it makes it impossible for her to maintain that grip. So it's not a strength thing as far as the pulling. It's more about the total chakra. It's about the leverage. 1, 2, and then she gets her straight. And manages that distance. So, 1, 2, right, and backs off. Right. Okay, so if I'm doing it, 1, 2, and then I'm managing the distance. Okay. All right. So that's all the grips. And by the way, if it's just one, same thing. Okay. And also, it can be that sort of 12-6 elbow strike. Come back. Two-hand choke defenses. So Kathy takes a two-hand choke on me. I get my base. The really basic one. Now I step out from this horse stance to that T stance. And I'm here. And I'm ready to strike back or whatever. But my step is very simple. So the step goes from, you get base, right? And then I step back to that T position and I bow and roll out. A lot of athletes have kind of a problem with this because they tend to squat like in an athletic movement. And again, this is a hinge, it's not a squat. So we're gonna push it down just a little bit. Boom. So I'm here, hey, don't choke me, and then I just step out and roll out. And I'm in that T position. Okay. So you don't need to over squat on this. We're just getting our base, stepping back, rolling out. Okay. Kathy gets it. Boom. Step up, roll out. Boom. My neck being strong and that bow is going to break those thumbs off. Okay. And I don't need to bow any further than that. You know, as soon as those are broken, they're broken right now. Now I can just continue to roll. I don't need to bow any further. I don't need to squat any further. So if I do it to Kathy, she settles her weight. Yeah, boom. Exactly. And Kathy is an athlete, so she's used to squatting. So she needs to step back. Let the legs drive the play. So settle your weight. Now take a big step back with your right foot or whatever foot you're going back with. Bow. Yeah. Yeah. And don't over rotate your upper body. Just, you can bow planar. Bow, right? And then I will yeah. Yeah. So that you do, like, you got to go into it a little bit, you know. All right. Let the rollout come after the bow. Yeah. No, let's squat. Yeah. More hinge. Yeah. Boom. There we go. Aha. There it is. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Cool. So, and we worked on this a couple times. So there you go. Squat. Do you get your base? Don't squat anymore. Bow. Step out. Boom. Okay. Cool. All right. Sweet. We've worked on this a couple times, so we're going to work on it some more. There's at least two other two-hand choke defenses. One is basically what goes to a koshiguruma. So now instead of the bowing, and this also applies if Kathy is like a bully and like grabs my jacket and is like, "Hey, Twinkie," you know, I'm gonna come up and cup her elbow on the one side, and then my other is gonna come through between her arms, comb my beautiful hair, and elbow her in the face, and then I'm gonna scoop her up. So, we're here. I come up. This comes up. Boom. Reaches over. As that reaches over, my foot steps to be just in front of her crossed toes. And now I'm going to pivot on that foot and settle my hips down to get underneath. And then I'm going to pick her up. Okay. So you can see that our legs are more important than our faces here. What's going to, as this arm comes up, whoop, whoop, this foot steps across. All right. And I'm underneath. Okay. Ideally, my belt is under her belt, because at that point, then it's pretty easy for me to pick her up. Okay. So want to give that a try?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm maybe.
Sure.
So I'm here. And that combs your hair. Yeah. Nope. Step across with your right foot. There you go.
So what do I do with this hand?
That goes around my head.
Oh.
It's a headlock for it.
Oh, okay.
It's going to feel pretty natural too.
So it goes this way?
Yeah, and just keeps going. Step with your right foot. Step with your right foot. There you go. Nope, go around my head. Grab my trap with your right hand. Right. And then step your left foot back behind you. You want to leave them there. Yeah. Now it's pretty easy for you to just. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, that doesn't come natural.
Comes naturally to Miles. So so I'm here. The one goes to my elbow. The other goes to your hair, goes to your own head.
Uh-huh.
And then you step across with your right
With
foot.
my right foot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And punch across to my left. Right, exactly. Put your hips underneath. Good. Very good.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Perfect. One more time. Boom. Hips underneath. Hey, that's all it is. Pretty natural throw. Makes a lot of sense to people. So again, you feel the grips on you. One comes up, the other comes to comb your hair. You step across, boom, and now you settle your hips in. You're on your skis, so ideally your feet are between their legs as far as getting underneath them. And also in the event that you're not tall, like both of us are not tall, it allows you to be taller underneath their hips because you're able to just come up. Okay, one more time. So boom, hit your base. So yeah, and then step across as you come here. So hips in, and then put in and toss. Yeah. Perfect. Excellent. Cool. Okay, and then the final one, as far as the two-hand choke defense, is a little tricky. So basically, a little tricky to show. It's the picture frame. Okay, whatever arm is on the outside, that's going to be the one that thumb is down. I'm just sort of, it's like hand on your heart, and then this one. So Kathy goes to the two-hand choke. I get my base still, and make